This is the Merschman Seeds Weekly Weather Briefing, March 24th, 2018. I'm John Felt. And boy, I tell you, in many areas right now, you would not really think there's any sign of spring on the horizon. It ranges from sort of a dreary, cold day to almost like a midwinter day with a lot of snow. Matter of fact, this is the current radar as I'm making this briefing. We have a narrow streak, very narrow streak. Matter of fact, if you were right here, you wouldn't be getting anything. And if you're right there, you'd be getting all sorts of snow. So a very narrow track that extends from southern Minnesota, across northeast Iowa, northern Illinois, central Indiana, parts of Ohio and Kentucky. And within that, we have some really heavy snow going on. So far, there's been up in the area in yellow there, 6 inches to over 8 inches of snow. Here's sort of a close-up of south central Minnesota down into towards Mason City. Looks like just southeast of Mason City, we're over a foot of snow. And it's going to continue. It's not over yet. So we're really getting a very heavy snow in these areas. It does look like it's a pretty narrow band. And, you know, if we look at the precipitation over the last week, you can really see, sort of interesting to me, this is this band here, and that's the snow. And here's an area of some stronger thunderstorms that pass through west-east across central Missouri. But most of these bands are fairly narrow. See how narrow these are right here? This is only about, right there, and this is only about right there. So if you're in one of these bands, you're getting the impacts of the rain or the snow. If you're not, you're sort of experiencing more benign but still chilly weather. So the areas where we need additional rain is somewhat limited right now. We have northern Missouri, parts of southeast Iowa, parts of western Missouri, and definitely Kansas could use more precipitation. Look at Kansas, parts of Kansas now. The area in dark red is exceptional drought, and that's Oklahoma as well. That's the highest category of drought. Smaller parts of the upper Midwest also, but the significant majority of the Corn Belt right now is in good shape as far as winter recharge precipitation. And in some cases, we don't want any more, especially over Ohio and other parts of the eastern Corn Belt. Now we're in a transition here, and I wish I could give you better news and say that we get this mild weather pattern that we'd all personally probably are looking forward to. I know I am. But also just to help dry out things a bit and get us going towards a progression towards spring. Well, if you're expecting that, you're not going to be hearing that from me, because what we have here is this area of low pressure, and we're going to transition here. You'll see it in a minute. Next 5 days, it's beginning to work in. You can see the colder than normal. Look at that. The model's picking up on that snow cover. So if you're in that snow band, that's going to keep your temperatures down. But really the entire Corn Belt near to below normal temperatures. Now over the next 7 days, over the next couple days really, we're going to have some heavy rain and snow over parts of the central and eastern Corn Belt. We have more snow on the way here over Iowa, down through that really narrow band that I've been talking about. And if we zoom up here, you can sort of see Mason City, right around Mason City, 12 to 18 inches of snow down to Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, Davenport. Very heavy snow in that area. We'll have to keep an eye on that, because that's going to give us a little bit of a vulnerability for flooding once that melts. This late season snow, especially if we get heavy rain on top of that. I don't see the heavy rain on top of it scenario right now, but we need to be alert for that. So the snow is going to be the big story. The second big story is going to be this area of low pressure. This is almost what I'd call a displacement of the polar vortex. This time of year you wouldn't be really thinking that, but we have this sort of cyclonic flow here, and you know what? I think in mid-December and mid-January, you heard me talking about this on my briefings. Well, I could go back and probably dig out one of my briefings from that time, and it looked just like that. And I tell you, I know I say this almost every week, Minnesota, Dakotas, surrounding states, parts of Wisconsin, Montana, even Nebraska and northwest Iowa. Boy, it's been a harsh winter with this persistent cold, and now we're getting into spring, and that pattern just doesn't want to break. So that's a 6 to 10 day temperature. Then we get April 3rd through 8th. Not much change at all. We still have that trough. We still have the cyclonic pattern, very broad cyclonic pattern. Look at this. The entire Corn Belt below normal, but especially anchored over the upper Midwest. So week 1, I think I've talked about week 1. We have the band of snow going right through here. We have some heavy precipitation in this area. Week 2, we'll see. I don't see anything exceptional right now, but there could be some additional precipitation over the areas outlined in that region. Now, sometimes on these briefings, these tend to be the short-term briefings, and throughout the week I talk about the longer term, but I wanted to look a little bit further out, weeks 3 and 4. Temperatures on the left, look at that. If this is right, this could mean that we go well into April without changing this pattern, delaying a lot of things that we've normally seen, the progression of soil temperatures. And then look on the right side, the eastern Corn Belt, you know what that means, colder temperatures than normal and above normal precipitation. That's certainly not ideal either. So I see some things that cause me a concern here for early season relating to below normal temperatures and over the eastern Corn Belt. And with that snow melting, even the central Corn Belt, with the possibility of delayed planting until we get into some more milder weather that's going to dry things out. So the takeaway, alert to heavy snow. This band right here in pink, winter storm warnings. Overall, I think the big trend here is a very strong, persistent cold pattern ahead that very well could last a good part of April. So I'll be looking at that more and more. I talked to Joe Merschman about really focusing in on temperature and rainfall, especially in light of planting. So I'm going to be focusing on that a lot this spring. And this is your first heads up for this cold pattern and perhaps wet over the east as well. Anyway, wish I had better news. That's this week's briefing. Take care.